Hello and welcome to the second edition of the Sixers wrap-up show powered by 97.5 The Fanatic. No Sean Brace or Sam Ostry today, but I'm here to break everything down, and boy, do I have a doozy in doing so. A frustrating loss by the Philadelphia 76ers, an embarrassing loss at the New Orleans Pelicans, the 15-42 Pelicans as they entered, just picked up their 16th win of the season, a 126-111 loss by the 76ers, a matchup that they just had to have. This had to be a business-like victory, and it was anything but that. Now, we got a lot to get into that I do want to touch on this post-game show. I want to dive into a little bit of the wider view of the season and why I think it is time to officially hit the panic button. It is time to address that this team just might not be that good. Now, once again, no Sean Brace or Sam Ostry, but I'm here holding things down on the Sixers wrap-up show and doing a dive into the takeaways. First, just start off with the raw numbers, a 126-111 victory by the Pelicans there. The Sixers had them on the ropes early on, outscored them 29-24 in the first quarter, outscored them 36-33 in the second quarter there. They built a comfortable lead coming into halftime, and lo and behold, that third quarter bites them in the butt once again. Now, as far as the guys on this team overall, it was Tyrese Maxey leading the way with his scoring as usual, had 27 points in his 36 minutes, but the efficiency continues to dip. 9 of 23 from the field, 2 of 11 from beyond the three-point arc, but I'm not here to make excuses for tired legs. This is a bad Pelicans team. This is a second worst in the league type record type Pelicans team. This is a Pelicans team playing on the second night of a back-to-back, a Pelicans team without their top scorer in Trey Murphy III. And what did the Sixers do? But just outright lose. Now, to speak on this game in its entirety, I can't keep doing this third quarter thing. They were outscored in tonight's matchup 40-26 in the third quarter by 14 points by, once again, the lowly New Orleans Pelicans, the 9-21 at home New Orleans Pelicans right there. There's a couple directions that you can go with this third quarter, which once again has been a theme of the entire season and certainly felt like a situation where tonight is where it fell apart. Now, obviously, this has been happening all year. The excuses for that mean one of two things. Either other teams and every single team in the league is making adjustments the Sixers simply are not ready for, or this team just does not have the mental composure to get up in the second half in the way that you just have to. The margin for error for this Sixers team, when you don't have Joel Embiid, when you don't have Paul George, the margin for error is slim. And all that they have done is give teams opportunities to get back into games, and that's exactly what the Pelicans did take advantage of tonight. Now, I know everyone's frustrated. I know everyone's ready to sound off, so feel free to get involved in the conversations. This is a safe space in the comment section below. Feel free to ask your questions, get involved, let it rant, let it all out below, because that's exactly what I plan on doing. Now, to dive down the rest of the production for the Sixers team, a nice Kelly Oubre Jr. game in his 33 minutes of action. He had 25 points, 5 rebounds, and a pair of assists there. Shot 7 of 15 from the field, knocked down 4 three-pointers. Did Kelly. Had 15 first-half points, and they were necessary for this Sixers team. It was important that Kelly did do his job today. As I blast out another quick tweet here, getting things fired up. Once again, make sure to get involved in the conversation below. And when speaking about where everything else did go wrong, it obviously starts with no Joel Embiid being available. Now, we know the deal with Joel Embiid. And what's so frustrating to me about this specific angle right here is it felt like there was so much progress at the start of the season that this team had finally invented ways win without your superstar. That we know that Joel Embiid is one of the more dominant players in the sport of basketball. And when he's at his best, which he has been for a large portion of this season, he can carry just about any roster to win. And the ultimate conclusion that I think we are circling back to is that's what was going down this season. It was Joel Embiid carrying this team to win. Now, when putting that point to the side, obviously Embiid has not been here on an every game basis. And that is the deal at this point. It is now right knee and shin issues that he is dealing with. Who knows? He did travel on the road trip. There seems to be some level of optimism that he will play tomorrow. But we cannot be doing, as we have been for the past decade, of just playing Joel Embiid, carry us home. There has to be something else on this roster. And the reality is that there just might not be. Now, for as far as the Tyrese Maxey conversations, there's been some weird discourse on his outlook. Tyrese Maxey's been excellent. He's been far achieved what any realistic expectations were of him coming into this league. He's taken another leap this year, a true all-star, a true top 10 player in the sport of basketball this season. What is also true about Tyrese Maxey is he's certainly more of a ceiling raiser than a floor raiser. And I throw those in two different categories for a very important reason. Joel Embiid, one of the best floor raisers in the sport. That you throw whatever 4 players are around him, it's going to be a somewhat competent basketball team that has a chance. That is not true of Tyrese Maxey. That is not a criticism of him directly. That has far more to do with stylistically who he is as a player. That when you are a 6'4" guard that is so dependent on your speed and athleticism, getting downhill and everything that does, involve his game right there. It does not carry the same weight as a big man like Joel, who sets the tone on both sides of the floor and obviously does that at a lesser rate at this stage of his career than was the case earlier on. I'm not here to tear down Tyrese Maxey, who's been excellent. What I am here to tear down is pretty much everything else on this roster, and it does start at the very top. Now, I don't want to get too far off the track from this specific game, so to stay on this point for now, the other guys that did stand out tonight, we got the Andre Drummond star. He had 5 points. He did pull in 12 rebounds and had quite a few mix-up with Derek Queen. No clue what that was about. There was like 3 just pure basketball plays that Derek Queen somehow got upset about. Andre Drummond somehow got a technical in that as well, which was insane when he just did nothing wrong. But the clear tactic from the New Orleans Pelicans angle coming tonight is that they plan to bully this Sixers team, that they wanted to get in there, be more physical, be bigger. And that's what they rolled out. That their starting lineup tonight that the Pelicans did roll with, we're talking about point guard Zion Williamson, along with Herb Jones, DeAndre Jordan, Derek Queen, and Saddiq Bey. Not a player on that floor that is under 6'6". To compare that with the Sixers team, plenty of talent under 6'6", and unfortunately, rebounding is always an issue. Even at full strength, even with Joel Embiid on the floor, this is a team that can get killed on the boards. And that was the angle that the Pelicans went into tonight with the goal of trying to tear apart. They ultimately weren't successful on that angle. That the Sixers maintained. They hung in there early on and looked strong in the early minutes. And by the way, Zion Williamson now played 32 consecutive games in the season here, the most in his career, and you can see him starting to find his stride. It is still a wild disappointment for where he is at this stage of his career, now in year 7 in the NBA, and we're still talking about this guy as like a what if or what he could be, when the reality is this dude was branded and should be a primetime main NBA superstar, and he's just not. But he's putting it together, and that is something that he does deserve a little bit of credit for, and we're starting to see the turnaround. This Pelicans team is not as bad as their raw record indicates. They're a team that you have to take seriously. That's another theme that I circle back to with the Sixers team, is they just don't do that. They play with their food. They look over opponents. And I don't understand this just vibe of we're better than you, this elitism mentality that they've had for years, that because we have more talent than you, we're just going to beat you at basketball. And that's just not how sports work. It's not how the NBA works. And they certainly don't even have that level of talent to lean on this year, particularly when 75% of your salary cap is sitting at home right now with Paul George suspended and with Joel Embiid injured with those. Now, when we're talking about that point of conversation there, this boils down to there's not much else that can be done on the roster. When you have such a high percentage of your overall roster committed, of the overall salary cap committed to those players, when they are not there, the gap is massive. That Daryl Morey, to his credit, has hit on a lot of these bottom of the roster guys, the Dominic Barlows of the world, the Justin Edwards of the world, who got a little bit of run today, and that's been a foreign occurrence of late with the Sixers team. But the reality is, finding diamonds in the rough is just not going to get the job done when speaking about the wider scale of this roster. There's like 2 guys that are threats to score on the floor at any given time. And I do appreciate the comments coming in. Shout out to 76ers TTP as he chimes in saying, this team is a mess and it's way bigger than any McCain trade. We got decent value on McCain. Not great, not awful. This team can't defend with or without McCain when Embiid doesn't play. And I think that is fair. And to kind of dig in on the Jared McCain trade, I know that this is kind of beating a dead horse. I've been very vocal how against the concept of that trade. Now, we can get lost in the conversation of how good will Jared McCain be as a player. We can disagree on what his ceiling is. I do feel that this is a guy that does have all-star potential. I do feel that they gave up on Jared McCain far too easily and far too quickly at a rate. And what confuses me in that specific conversation is this is a dude that Daryl Morey drafted, that he himself walked to the podium with the 16th overall pick and said, I want Jared McCain as a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. And what happened from that point was the dude shined. He would have been the runaway rookie of the year if he did stay healthy for the duration of the season, that he vastly outperformed any realistic expectations, and then they punted on him a year later. But you are right at 76ers TTP for your overall point. It's not the McCain trade in a nutshell. Again, if they didn't believe in the guy, and that's what I do think that trade boils down to, that's fine. What I have a problem with in the whole process is the trade deadline that was done by the Philadelphia 76ers was to trade away Jared McCain and Eric Gordon for not a single player in return. Daryl Morey's been on record quite a few times that if you believe you have even a 5% chance at winning the championship, you deserve to go to it. for every benchmark that you could have possibly looked at, this team had largely overachieved for the first half of the year. Now, obviously, not the case currently. They've dropped 4 straight. They've been pretty much dreadful since the All-Star break right there. But if you believe, as Daryl Morey has stood at the podium and proclaimed right here, that this team has a chance this year, then you owe it as the general manager, as the president of basketball operations, to get talent that can help them win. Just punting talent without getting anything in return just actively makes this team worse. And don't even hit me with the, they got campaigned, sign him from overseas. And I like Campaign. I'm happy he's on that team. But to act like Campaign is a difference maker in the wider scale of the season is just a naive mindset right there. My problem with that trade is it just made the Sixers worse without replacing it. And I know Morey did the whole dance of we intended to, package those picks to get a win now piece. That was done ahead of time to pave the way for that deal. Well, guess what, boss? That deal did not come together. That is a results-based world that we live in, and no deal was done on that conversation. And when you watch guys like Jose Alvarado on the New York Knicks, or you watch just your random role player on any given night that can step up, and the Sixers just don't have those guys. That's a problem. That's where this boils down. When you don't have Joel Embiid, you're going to be without all that production, but there aren't guys that can scale up this role. And there were guys available that could have filled those shoes. There were 28 trades made at the NBA trade deadline. There were 78 players that were traded at the NBA trade deadline. And not a single one of those came to Philadelphia to help this Sixers team. There's not enough talent on this roster. The reality is this is a middle-of-the-pack team that Joel Embiid has to put on his Superman suit once again and try and lift them into any sort of postseason hope. That's just not going to happen. They just lost to the 15-win New Orleans Pelicans in pretty embarrassing fashion. Now, a couple stats that I did also want to give out in the game from the team side of things. I hear a lot of the shooting variants. I've seen a lot of that on the timeline. For what it's worth, the Pelicans in this game shot 49% from the field, shot 50% from beyond the three-point arc. That's a stunning number. That's obviously well above what you'd expect for a team. They shot 17 of 34 from beyond the arc. To compare that to the Sixers, they shot 38% from the field, so 11% worse than the Pelicans. They shot 26% from beyond the three-point arc, so 24% worse than what the Pelicans. That's a lot of points that you're making up. Just look at the three-point line directly here. That the Pelicans, 15 more points poured in from the arc than the Sixers directly there. Sure, shooting variance is a part of that equation, but not all looks are created equal. And that's kind of a problem I have with this entire defensive system that Nick Nurse is running with. Nick Nurse is a championship-winning head coach that he's coached in a variety of countries, a variety of levels, has had success at pretty much every single aspect of those. But what is also true about Nick Nurse is he does not seem to be malleable to the style of play for what his roster indicates. I feel very strongly that an important trait of a coach is maximizing the talent that you do have, playing within the guardrails of what those players' skill sets are. That's not a quality that I do think applies to Nick Nurse. He still coaches this team like they are the 2019 Raptors. Like you have Kawhi Leonard and Chris Boucher and Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, all those guys rotating around, capable of generating turnovers and fixing things. That's not how this roster is built. When you have Tyrese Maxey and Quentin Grimes and Kelly Oubre Jr. is the closest to that. And even as they've gone down this path of let's get more wings, let's get more athleticism, let's bring in Dominic Barlow, give Jabari Walker a chance. Justin Edwards sort of fits the mold to an extent. When comparing those on a linear standpoint to who those players were that Nurse has brought out the best in, it's just not the same, man. And Tyrese Maxey, God bless him once again, all 6'4" of them, he's not going to be able to sprint around the perimeter and generate turnovers at the rate that this system commands him to. And Maxey's averaging 2 steals a game. He's been fine. He's been far better defensively than I reasonably expected or that I think was fair to with that. And another point here, and shout out to my guy getting in at 76er TTP. When you see what Anthony Simon's trade value was after his rookie deal, I get Daryl wanting to capitalize on McCain's rookie contract. Campaign is low-key the backup point guard we need. I'm not even mad about I disagree with the concept of it. I'm not mad about the McCain trade directly if that's how they feel about it. I disagree on how we feel about it, and I like Campaign on this roster. It's the inaction beyond that that's inexcusable to me. There were moves to be made to improve this team. Sadiq Bey just lit the Sixers up tonight. What did he finish with in this matchup? Who's had an absolute resurgent year down in New Orleans, and there's no reason for him to be continuing on that roster. He finished tonight with 20 points, 4 rebounds, had 2 assists as well, shot 4 of 7 from 3. Yeah, that's a guy that would help this Sixers team. And by the way, a Nick Nurse guy that he can rotate. He can be physical. He is a long athletic wing that can play that style of basketball. But this commitment to we're still playing that style defensively where we want to rotate around, we want to cause disruptions, and to kind of like give the perspective of why Nick Nurse thinks this way, the theology behind that is the most difficult to play in basketball. Like all these guys in the NBA are incredible basketball players. I know I'm stating the obvious right there. It's really hard to stop a guy when you just leave him in one-on-one situations. If you are playing any player in the NBA in a one-on-one just fashion right there, they're going to get their buckets. They're going to get to their spots. They're going to score at a pretty effective rate. What Nurse subscribes to is the best way to, rattle opponents is by throwing multiple bodies at them. And the most opportunistic play defensively is when passes are made, that you want to force teams to pass because that's when you do have a chance to generate turnovers and get out in transition. So the theory is from Nick Nurse, if I'm running guys around on the half court, that I'm throwing doubles, forcing passes, at some point there's going to be mistakes made that you have a chance to ultimately capitalize on. Once again, the problem with the Sixers just don't have the personnel for that to be effective. That Quentin Grimes is not going to rotate around this court being capable of generating turnovers at this level. Yes, VJ Edgecombe can do it, and I appreciate what VJ has brought to this team. Thought it was a fine game from him, even though, once again, a little less aggressive than I would like to be the case. And for what it's worth, VJ played 35 minutes of action, finished with 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists, shot 1 of 5 from 3. That's not enough. And it's not the 1 of 5 that I'm mad about. It's that he only attempted 5. Cam Payne, shout out to him, 1 for 6 off the bench. I'll take 6 attempts in 13 minutes because they just need offense. And Mr. Quentin Grimes, I keep circling back to. He played 26 minutes of action tonight. He had 11 points, 3 assists, and 1 rebound. Grimes is certainly tied to this McCain trade as a vote in confidence of we believe that this guy can fill these shoes, that he can be everything that Jared McCain is supposed to be and more. And sure, maybe a cleaner fit stylistically to what Nick Nurse wants. But if you're Quentin Grimes, and you got the stones to walk in Daryl Morey's office last year and say, you should pay me $30 million to play basketball for this team, which thankfully Daryl Morey did not agree to that principle right there. But if you have the guts to do that, you should have the guts to look like a $30 million player on a somewhat regular basis, man. And he's just not that. Quentin Grimes is fine. Again, none of these issues are particularly like about these players directly. It's that there's not higher marks ahead of them. And again, that boils down to the way that this salary cap is distributed. When you have such a top-heavy roster with the 3 max contract guys, with Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey, you're not going to hit on this mid-tier of talent, the middle-of-the-pack guys, the Kelly Oubre Jr. tier of players. And Oubre was completely fine tonight. It's not about him either. There's not enough options that this team does have. There's going to be far better teams than this New Orleans Pelicans roster that the Sixers are going to struggle with. Now, to rip through my notes a little bit on this game overall, the Pelicans started with their jumbo roster. The Sixers leap out to an 8-0 lead in that matchup. It felt like at the start of this game that there was this positive start. They were trending in the right direction. That I wanted to get on this mic after this game and talk about this was a necessary business-like victory by the Sixers, but it turned into everything but that. And I think back to this summer where Tyrese Maxey, who stepped up as the face of the organization, been everything as a basketball player, a personality, everything that you could hope for. But what he stood up and said at the start of the summer is, I want there to be a standard that this Sixers team, when you come and see them play, whether Joel Embiid's there, whether Paul George is there, whoever, there's a standard of expectations. And for a couple months, it felt like they were making progress with that there was a little bit of this team's going to compete. This team's going to give all effort, all heart. They're going to give you everything you've got. And it kind of has slipped as the season has gone on. And that's the most disappointing part about this to me, is it felt like we were kind of inching towards a change in identity. Not just that this is Tyrese Maxey's franchise, but that everyone was running behind him. There was this cohesiveness, this connectiveness, this different vibe of it isn't just Joel Embiid basketball, go bail us out. There was momentum. The more that Joel Embiid has become available once again, they've become incredibly dependent on that's just how we're going to win. It is purely based on that guy carrying us to the promised land. And then we see what happens when nights like tonight do not happen. Now, to go down the list a little bit, I thought Kelly Oubre Jr. had an excellent first half, poured in 15 points. They needed every bit of him, and a good game overall. They lost the third quarter 40-26. They trailed by 13 with 7:24 left in the fourth, and then it only got worse to blow what ended up being like a 20-plus point loss. That they were outscored 40-26 in the third quarter and then 29-20 in the fourth right there. It's just they ran out of gas, and that's unacceptable in the context of this matchup. Again, this is a Pelicans team on the second half of a back-to-back. This is a Pelicans team without Trey Murphy, without their top scorer on the night. This is a Pelicans team that's won 15 games all season, and you have to be ready to step on teams that should be inferior to you talent-wise, and the Sixers just aren't. Now, the problem that we're now circling back to is they just have to find a way to pick up wins, man. That there is still this somewhat, and it doesn't feel like it tonight whatsoever, but you can, if to use a Daryl Morey phrase, squint and see the vision of what this team could be if they can get to the playoffs. If you can get a healthy Joel Embiid playoff run. But the issue is you're now digging the hole. To take a peek at the NBA standings overall, the Sixers are one game above the Orlando Magic for that 6th seed. The Heat are surging. They're tied with the Magic there. The Hawks, they're not going to go away. The Hornets have been playing incredible basketball. If we then slip into the play-in mix, that's a dangerous place for the Sixers team. I'm not like afraid that they can't win a play-in game, but what is the win there? Is you earn a chance to face the Detroit Pistons or probably the Boston Celtics in a series. Is that what we want? Because think about what the pathway could be. If you can stay above the 6th seed, and we are talking about a playoff path where an opening round matchup with the Cavaliers, if the season ended today. I know the Cavs are very good. I know they're living through the James Harden honeymoon period right now, but that's at least a series where you can give yourself a puncher's chance. And say you win that, and then maybe you can get a matchup with, say, the Toronto Raptors. That is absolutely a team the Sixers can beat, but they can't beat anyone right now is also the problem. So while there is this clear path that they can establish for themselves, every time they shoot themselves in the foot by letting these games drop, you minimize the chances of that actually going down. And once again, I appreciate the comments here. Shout out to @76ers TTP once again. He says, Nick Nurse relies on defense to create offense, but we suck at defense and we don't get stops. Our half-court offense is an ISO. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. That there is no creativity on the offensive end. It is so much Tyrese Maxey bail us out. And I will say on the last episode of this, I was really critical about just how much the ball was in Tyrese Maxey's hand. Again, this is a coaching thing of you have to generate ways to make life easier on your star players, and Nurse has not done a good job of that. I did think it was better today, and it is crazy to say, like a guy like Cam Payne is incredibly helpful from that. Even things like him just being a professional basketball player, him spotting that we have a matchup that Maxey can capitalize on. Let me go set a screen, get a switch, things like that. It's important. It's helpful. But that's not enough, man. Like, there's got to be more than that. And there's got to be other options. Now, like, when actually thinking through who are the threats to score on the Sixers team, that's where things get problematic. That, yes, VJ Edgecombe is going to give you what he's going to give you. And I don't want to be too critical of VJ because he's 20 years old. He's in his first year in the league and has been really impressive. I even commend his ability to not be disruptive to a team, that he can be the glue. There's going to be days where most of his impact is on the defensive end or rebounding the basketball or as a playmaker. He's led the team in assists in certain games like that. But they need somebody to score. So if it's not going to be Tyrese Maxey, if VJ Edgecombe is going to have his in and out, do you trust Kelly Oubre Jr.? Can Quentin Grimes be the microwave scorer? Because he has not. The last time he scored 20-plus points in a matchup was December 5th. December 5th was the last time that this guy put up 20-plus in a game. Mr. $30 million man. And the other options that we can talk about on this roster, who do you trust out of this group to actually generate offense? Is it Dominic Barlow, who's excellent in his role? I appreciate what Dom Barlow brings to this team. Had a couple nice coast-to-coast plays tonight. Andre Drummond, certainly not. Is it Justin Edwards, Cam Payne? There's just not options that are NBA quality, just sources of scoring for the Sixers team. We're looking down the barrel of a very mediocre roster that the superstars got to step up and actually carry this team. And that's not going to happen for the foreseeable future. For Paul George, we're going to get him back with 10 games left in the regular season. And I will say for Paul George directly, I did the glass half full thing at first of, at least he's going to be fresh for playoffs. You'll get him healthy for sure. That's the case, whatever with that. He's so instrumental to what this defense is. And I know he's not the max contract guy that people hope for. He's not going to be dropping 30-plus points on a regular basis, but he had settled into what his role is on the Sixers team. And it kind of disrupted all of that. That really where the season started to fall apart. It was that stretch. It was Paul George getting suspended, and it was Jared McCain getting traded. And Jared McCain, for all the flaws that he does have, at least he is a guy who has some semblance of generating offense. And by the way, fresh off a 21-point performance on the Oklahoma City Thunder, the defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder, the deepest team in the league, Oklahoma City Thunder. So I have to hear from Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey about we have too many guards. We just can't find minutes for him. And he goes to the team that just won the NBA championship last year, that is known for their youth, known for their development, known for all the draft picks that they have hit on. And they find an immediate role for him. And I know it was against the Brooklyn Nets. I know a lot of it was in garbage time right there. But the fact that he is capable is something that is not true about the vast majority of the Sixers roster right here. There are not creators. There are not guys that can score without the table being set for them. The Kelly Oubre Jr., He is a fine player in his role, but he needs a guy to feed him looks. He needs catch and shoot opportunities. He needs a lane to get downhill. He's not a guy that's going to be, dribbling around on the perimeter and getting to his spots. They don't have guys to do that right now. So for this specific game, what is disappointing to me is this is one of those clear chances that you could have picked up a business-like win, and they didn't do it. They did not take care of business. They did not handle business. They did not play to their standard, the standard that Tyrese Maxey aspired to set at the start of the season. The problem on the wider scale is it does not get easier. Playing the Minnesota Timberwolves tomorrow. I know Rudy Gobert is suspended, but guess what? Anthony Edwards isn't. Guess what? Naz Reid isn't. Guess what? They still have a ton of talent right there. That is going to be a night and day more difficult matchup on the second half of a back-to-back. If you were to ask which of these teams looked tired, which the team was playing on the second night consecutively here, everyone would have guessed the Sixers, and that's just not the case. There's not this spirit. There's not this energy. There's not this hunger that there felt like there was at the start of the Sixers season. The vibe, the outlook for the season has really sunk. I'm not sure what they can do to get the train back on the tracks. Is it just you can get a stretch of, positive play and consistent availability from Joel Embiid? Is that enough to kind of put this toothpaste back in the tube? Talk about maybe this team can handle business, take care of things, because there were stretches where you could see it. The victory over the Rockets, taking care of the New York Knicks. They have some big wins. They have not been afraid. But what the Sixers are a team that can beat anybody or lose to anybody. And what that is not the description of a team that is any sort of actual contender right now. Just looking down what this roster is, it just feels like they're lacking. And this does circle back to, yes, I'm being critical of Nick Nurse for some of the system stuff, but I got to be more critical of Daryl Morey for not giving him the proper assets to work with right here. There's not enough talent on this roster. That the Sixers are at a talent discrepancy against most of the league on a nightly basis. That's unacceptable. That for any win from here on out, it's going to take a Herculean effort from Tyrese Maxey. It's going to take a 35-plus, 40-plus point performance for this team just to have a chance. And Maxey's playing himself into the ground, man. This dude's leading the league in minutes. He hasn't had a chance to get any sort of break, even all-star break. He's still out there competing, doing his thing. This is kind of a humbling loss by the Sixers. This is one where it slaps you in the face, where you got to look at yourself and say, maybe we're not the team that we were trying to become. Maybe we're not the team that we set the standard and belief in ourselves at the start of the season, because that is certainly how it feels right now. Now, to dive into a couple other factors for this game, I did just want to highlight a couple other things here. Looking into the stat sheet once again, as far as the rebounding battle, I was kind of impressed by the Sixers sticking in there. 49-47 was the overall battle, particularly on the standpoint of obviously the jumbo lineup that the Pelicans did roll with. But take care of the ball, becoming more and more of an issue. That, yes, the Sixers only had 11 turnovers. Guess how many points they conceded off those 11 turnovers? 26. That is a lot. That means they're not getting back in transition well enough, that they're not picking up guys defensively at the proper rate. And to use the other side of that, that the Pelicans in this matchup turned the ball over 15 times. So the Sixers first forced 4 more turnovers, but only scored 11 points off that. So despite forcing 4 more turnovers, they generated 16 fewer points off those opportunities. That can't happen. That mathematically does not make sense for how the outlook goes. The Sixers led for 60% of this game, and then they absolutely fell apart down the stretch. I don't know what you can do to fix this current outlook. This is, once again, a very humbling loss that tells us a little bit about who the Sixers team actually is. It was nice to see Maxey be capable of, showing himself as one of the better players in the sport, a guy that can deliver, can be one of the top players and show all this. But we've come back to earth for all of this. That Kelly Oubre Jr. shooting above the back of his basketball card for the first half of the season. It was great to see. It was necessary to see, but it wasn't reality. And we're seeing that the law of averages always reigns true. And the shooting form is back. And again, I feel bad criticizing each of these guys directly, because in the wider scale of things, this feels like bigger than these specific basketball players. This feels like an organization that has not quite taken the steps to put together a winning team, that they have not brought enough talent. They have not checked the right boxes for building out things. It is maddening. And also pointing out, we've had these fraudulent losses literally all year. Feel like we've been frauds for a while that people are just waking up to. It certainly does feel like that. Like, this is one that you to slap yourself in the face for this one. This is a splash of water of, yeah, maybe we're not the team that we've been trying to talk ourselves into. There is no clear pathway to fixing things outside of Paul George and Joel Embiid get on the floor. And again, those guys are needle movers to the extent of everyone can reduce into their role a little bit, which is what I'm asking. I'm saying all of these guys are being forced to play in roles beyond what they're expected of. And I know the immediate pushback is like, well, yeah, that's what, the max contract guys are supposed to do. But there's got to be a plan B, man, that I was so encouraged at the start of the season that there was this actual other style of basketball. There was this ability to win games without the star players right there. And that's non-existent at this stage of the game. The team just does not have enough with what is currently the case. So we're going to be back right here on Sixers Wrap Up tomorrow night as well. I will be joined by Sean Brace and Sam Ostry. They missed a fun one today for me ranting on this. Appreciate all you guys for rocking with me. Again, we're going to keep on plugging through the season, even if this Sixers team is not. That I promise to give you all out effort on these post-game shows, even if the team will not give all out effort on the floor right now. But it's getting harder and harder to have that level of optimism. It's getting harder and harder to talk yourself into, if they just get healthy, they do have an opportunity to make some sort of postseason noise. It does not feel like it's in the cards this year. And I understand that this was sort of a trial year, that the reality is this was a year where you sort of had this youth movement coming behind the scenes. You drafted VJ Edgecombe with a third overall pick. You still had Tyrese Maxey. I thought Jared McCain was a part of that plan, but obviously not. But you still had at the top of it, connected to Joel Embiid and Paul George, the significant contractual commitments that you do have made, over $100 million annually committed to each of those guys for 2 more seasons beyond this. So you sort of had to allow those to tick off, that maybe there is a world where you can move on from Paul George down the line, and all of a sudden you have some flexibility, that it gets easier and easier the closer there is to the end of that contract right there. So this was sort of a trial year for that. But in that trial year, you saw something, and what the Sixers did was absolutely failed to capitalize on it. That they allowed a massive opportunity to slip by not bringing in anything at the trade deadline. I'm not saying a single player could have fixed the issues that I'm talking about. I'm not saying that there's a specific guy that you get and all of a sudden all these problems are fixed. That is not true right there, but it gives you something, man. It gives you an opportunity. Any splash of a guy that could have made a marginal impact in the rotation would have been a pleasant change. And that is just not the direction that the Sixers did ultimately go. I said all season that how the Sixers attacked the trade deadline, how they approached the trade deadline would tell us how they really felt about this team. And I think the inaction speaks volumes. That actions speak louder than words. And the decision not to bring in anybody tells me right there that Daryl Morey knew this team did not have a chance. So we'll see what happens. I'll be back at this tomorrow. Make sure you guys keep tapping in. Shout out to all you guys for listening out there. Once again, Sean Brace and Sam Ashu will be back on stream with me tomorrow. But a frustrating loss by every single metric, every single way that you do break it down. Once again, thank you guys for hanging with me. Make sure to smash the subscribe button wherever you listen at, whether it is on YouTube. Follow me on socials. We got plenty more brewing, a ton of big plans, even if the team is not living up to what our expectations are. So appreciate you guys once again. I'll be back. Talk with you tomorrow. Peace.